Hello, hello everyone. Thank you for attending this panel discussion on how to get into the college of your dreams. My name is Ishmael Kissinger, and we have a couple of guest speakers on this discussion panel with us. First, we have Alex Lawson, who graduated from Moore High School in the class of 2020, and they are currently attending Northwestern University. We also have Dr. Heather Swadley, who is recently defended her PhD in political science at the University of Pennsylvania and will be finishing her JD at Temple Law in May. She plans to practice law at Wiley Rein in DC after graduation. Prior to her PhD, she received a master's degree from the London School of Economics at the University of London. She completed her BA in philosophy at William Jewell, where she was a part of the Oxbridge Honors Program, which allowed her to spend her junior year at Oxford University. And then our third panelist of the evening is Elisa Patterson. And Elisa attended undergrad at the University of Oklahoma and the medical school at OU College of Medicine, and is now finishing her pediatric residency at Sinai Hospital of Baltimore. And so what we're gonna do is really just kind of get into and provide some of the practices that these individuals have had on how to get into the university of their dreams. I think many of them, all of them, are where they wanted to be or further than where they wanted to be when they were still in high school. A little bit about me. I wanted to put this seminar on because when I was still in school, I didn't really have a lot of knowledge about how to get into universities, what steps I needed to take, or even how to apply for scholarships. And I know that I can't be the only one who's in that position. So we hope that in this discussion, we're able to provide some of those answers to you all just based on our experience. So thank you so much for watching and for watching this after the fact, after it's been recorded and posted. So with that, I will allow Alex Lawson to kind of discuss experiences on getting into Northwestern University, which is a top 10 school.
Hi, as has been said, my name is Alex Lawson, and I'm a freshman at Northwestern University. It's a college just north of Chicago and one of the better universities that a lot of people haven't really heard of. I graduated from Moore High School last year, makes me part of the class of 2020, which is a fact that I will literally never live down. And before I get into it, I just want to really really quickly thank Coach K for having me here and letting me check being on a discussion panel off my bucket list. When I first got into high school, even thinking about college was kind of weird. You know, there's a ton of variables at play that seemed completely out of my control. So getting into any college at all just kind of seemed like an abstraction, which I'm sure seems familiar to at least some of the people who are watching this. You know, I didn't know where I wanted to go to college, what I wanted to do in college or after college, etc. So I'm just going to try and take you through some of my experiences throughout high school that led to me getting to where I am right now. I'm going to start off with how I decided what I wanted to study and do in college, because that plays a really big role in deciding where you want to go, how you want to go about trying to get into colleges and all that. There are plenty of colleges that have really great engineering programs, but maybe not a great pre-med or philosophy program. And if you want to be an engineer, then, you know, the other things that that college doesn't necessarily have might not be quite so important for you, which is why I think it's really important in high school to try and get a grasp of what you want to study and what you might want to do with your life going forward. For me, what that looked like was just trying to find something that I really liked to do in high school, both academically and when it comes to extracurriculars. And I found those in a couple of history courses that I took and in doing speech and debate as an extracurricular. Basically, by taking those courses and doing speech and debate, I came to realize what really interested me, like what I wanted to study and what I wanted to spend the rest of my life trying to work with, which was how governments work and interact, and you know how that interaction shapes the world in ways that we remember for decades and centuries to come afterwards. So realizing that academically was my main focus really helped me to narrow down the pool of like what my dream colleges could be. Instead of focusing on college as an abstraction, you know, you have a list of colleges that are focused on the subject areas that you really like in high school and that you think you really want to study. But of course, if you're not going to become a professor, which, you know, a lot of people aren't, you are eventually going to need to have a plan of like what you want to do after high school or after all schooling, which I think you can come to find out in high school as well. For me, that took place through extracurriculars. I competed in speech and debate for all 4 years, and I came to realize that I really, really like public speaking and arguing with people. I also got involved with the Oklahoma Innocence Project and a couple of legally related extracurriculars outside of school and outside of speech and debate that showed me that that there are some flaws in the American justice system and in American laws. So putting those together, I came to realize that not only do I want to study how governments operate, but I want to work in terms of influencing law going forward. I want to eventually become a lawyer. So by taking those steps and figuring out like what interested me academically, as well as what I wanted to do beyond just academics, I was able to narrow down the list of colleges from a big abstract concept into just a couple that I wanted to go to, that I wanted to apply to. So that being said, you don't need to plan out your whole life or anything in high school. You don't need to think, or you don't need to come to any decisions about what you'll want to do just concretely as a career, but it really helps to have a good idea of what interests you before you settle on a college as a goal that you want to attain. For example, I am currently considering becoming an international relations major. I did not plan on that. I just knew that I liked how governments operated. I didn't know what precisely I would do with that academic interest until I got into college. But the key was finding that academic interest and finding where to begin looking and where to begin applying. Now I'm going to move on to talking about actually getting into college. A lot of people have a misconception about dream schools that you need to be great at everything. Like if you want to get into a top 10 college, they're only going to accept the valedictorian who is also the captain of the basketball team and started a small business that is reducing child hunger in the United States. That's really not true. You don't have to be Superman. What really good colleges are looking for is not perfect applicants. no one can be great at everything that they do. And the assumption that you have to try to be great at literally every option that's thrown at you is not only not true, but it's going to stress you out and stop you from pursuing things that you're really interested in and things that you can be great at because they appeal to you and because you're willing to put your time into them. Instead of colleges looking for people who are going to save the world, they're looking for people who have been able to identify something that they really are interested in and that they like and that they want to pursue, and that have been able to parlay that into success in that event or extracurricular or activity. For me, that was speech and debate. I was not a super well-rounded applicant going into college. I had good grades, I can write okay, and I was good at speech and debate. But because I didn't try to stress myself out and spread myself so thin between 30 extracurriculars, I was able to show colleges through my applications that I had the potential to have great success when I applied myself in something like in speech and debate. It doesn't have to be speech and debate for anybody. It can be really anything, so long as you're interested in it and you're willing to come back to it time and time again to put large amounts of effort into it and be successful. So if you ask me, the most important thing you can do in high school, aside from, getting good grades and paying attention in classes and trying to learn, but the most important thing other than that, to improve your odds of getting into the college you really want to get into, and also just to be happy, is to find something that you really like to do. Something that you can come back to time and time again to invest your time and energy, and which you think you can be successful in, but also importantly, something that you don't necessarily need to find success in to be happy doing it. Because if you find that, something that you're just genuinely happy doing, and you work hard on it, success and getting into a good college will follow. And even if success and getting into a good college don't follow, it'll still be something that you're glad you did after high school. Right, and that's my spiel, so I will pass the mic, metaphorically, I guess.
Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing that with us. And if you all have any questions for Alex, just send them to me and we will answer questions at the end. So our next speaker is going to be Elisa Patterson, and she's going to tell you about her experiences of going to university and going to med school and kind of her path. So.
Hi, everyone. So as Ish said, I'm Elisa Patterson. I graduated from Moore High School in 2008. So it's been a bit. And I think I had a very different kind of mindset in high school, kind of working towards college, than a lot of other kids like at the same time did. And I was a planner. Like my whole thing, I planned out all the courses I wanted to take and everything from the very beginning, because that to me kind of made me feel like I knew where I was going. And honestly, I think that was a huge help in doing that, in preparing for college. I didn't realize that it was helping me in more ways than one. So I think you have to kind of divide it up into two different groups. There are people in high school who know what they want to do. They have an idea of, what their major is going to be. And then the large majority, they typically don't know what they want to do. And they're kind of just going through high school, trying to check the boxes. And then once they finally realize what they want to do, they often feel like they're a little bit behind. So if you're in your earlier grades, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, plan out what things you can do. If you know the path that you're going to take, then try to focus, some of your electives and some of your classes on helping you learn more about that path. So you can kind of solidify, like, is this really what I want to do? So if you want to go into like engineering, take like physics. If you want to do medicine, focus more on biology. If you want to do, some kind of business on entrepreneur stuff, if you have an economy class or business class, try to do those things. But if you don't know what you want to do, you can still plan. You can still build a structure for yourself going through high school that will allow you to expose yourself to things that will help you make those decisions. So having diverse courses that you take, you may find something in your path that, really interests you and kind of directs you towards a career path. So I think that's like one of the things that I did in high school that I really felt was beneficial and would really encourage all of you to do, is really try to plan out what things you have to do. What are your required courses and where do you have some flexibility? So in doing that, then, as Alex was saying, kind of find the things that interest you, because just getting good grades is not enough to get you into a great college. Through my journey, going to OU for undergrad and then medical school after that, I think one of the biggest things I learned is that colleges and grad schools want to see who you are as a person. They don't want to see just the GPA that you have. They don't want to just see all the awesome grades. They want to see that you're a well-rounded person, that when you're in the real world, you're actually going to succeed because you have passion for something. And then when you really dedicate yourself to that goal or that purpose or that activity, that you can succeed in it. And make sure that is something that you're focusing on, that you want to enjoy life and find out who you are as a person, not just get the 4.9 GPA that is going to, get you to the top of your class and believe that that's going to get you into the college of your dreams, because that's not necessarily guaranteed. So I think those are some of the things that I feel like you can do while preparing for college, and the things that I did. So one of the things that I did in high school from 10th grade through 12th grade was speech and debate and mock trial. That was my passion. That was my enjoyment. That was what I worked at, aside from, my basic schoolwork. And I found incredible enjoyment in that, amazing memories that I will never forget. And, you can't ever earn that time back. You can't get that time back in high school to have those opportunities. So that was my focus. And I found that doing that gave me an incredible benefit when applying to colleges, because it built confidence, first of all, for me, that an initiative that I could go out and find the things that I needed and be able to explain myself and speak for myself, explain, what I wanted to do in life and why I was a good applicant, why I was a good candidate for that college or that medical school. And I think if I hadn't focused on something like that helped build myself as a person, and only focused on grades and only focused on getting that GPA, I don't know that I would have gotten into the college that I wanted. I don't know that I would have gotten into the medical school that I wanted. So I would really, really encourage you to do that. So my university undergrad was University of Oklahoma, and it was kind of a journey getting there. So my goals were lofty, and I would encourage everyone to have lofty goals, but be realistic about it. Did I apply to Ivy League schools? Heck yes, I did. Did I apply to big city schools on the East and the West? Yes. But I also understood, coming from Oklahoma, understanding the dynamics of how applying to universities work, that they most often want to have applicants from their own area. So I understood that, yes, I'm trying for these things, and it'll be fantastic if I get accepted to those universities, but I need to have my backups. I need to have the more realistic goals as well. And my kind of top option in the local area was University of Oklahoma, because I wanted to do medicine. And I knew that, you know, they had a great pre-med program, and they had a heavy emphasis on science. So it was kind of really easily decided that locally, this is where I wanted to go. And I did get out of state like secondary applications. But ultimately that's not where I was meant to go. And I am very happy that I got to go to University of Oklahoma. Then after completing undergrad, started the process of applying to medical school, and grad school applications are a whole different beast, and are much more involved. And so that application process really had me thinking, okay, where do I want to go for medical school? And again, I had my lofty goals. I had, you know, Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and all of those things. But then I also had my realistic options and my backups. And I think when you're applying to universities, when you're applying to grad schools, whatever level, I think having those goals for yourself, pushing yourself and saying, you know, yeah, I could get into Yale. I could get into Harvard. I can apply to those places. It's not crazy to think that. And you should never feel like you're crazy for thinking that. If that is something that you are passionate about and you want to pursue, absolutely go for it, but do so in a responsible, realistic way. Always understanding that it may not happen, and have those backups. So for medical school, I did the same thing. University of Oklahoma was a great option for me, because one of the things at that point in my life I was looking for was good like work-life balance, because I was planning on having a kid at some point before medical school or during medical school, and they had options for doing virtual learning and more flexible learning. So kind of thinking about those things as well, because a lot of you may have personal life things that affect how you can go to school, what school you can go to, the distance you can go. So have those as part of your criteria. Like this is what I'm looking for in my university. This is what I want to study. Do they have something that's going to help me? This is what I need in my life. Is this going to fit in with my life? Or is this too far for me to travel? Can I leave my family? Things like that. You definitely have to consider. So those are kind of the things that went into my thought process for picking my undergrad and graduate school. And I mean, ultimately, I got to a great place. I loved my undergrad. I loved my medical school. I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm actually glad I didn't go to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine because I live in Maryland now. That's where I'm doing my residency. And I see the medical students at Johns Hopkins, and that's not really the world I want to be in. But one thing I will tell you, even if your plans don't quite pan out, you end up where you need to be. You really do. And I don't know why. Like, honestly, I can't explain. Hopkins as like this top tier university, a place that I really wanted to go from when I was in high school. I didn't get an undergrad. I didn't get in medical school. I didn't get residency there either. But starting in the summer this year, I will actually be doing my fellowship in neurodevelopmental disabilities at Johns Hopkins. So trust that you're going to end up where you're going to go, where you're meant to go. I think that's kind of everything I have about my journey.
Thank you so much, Elisa. And that's wonderful. Our next speaker is going to be Dr. Heather Swadley, and she's going to tell you about her experiences. And also, this will be the last speaker, and then stick around. We're going to do a question and answer period following the speaker. So, Dr. Swadley, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks. It's really weird to hear myself referred to as Dr. Swadley because it's new as of Friday. but very exciting nonetheless. Thank you so much for having me. I graduated from Shawnee High School in 2009. I was involved in speech and debate in high school. And I will say that my path was probably a little bit more meandering than a lot of people's paths have been. I definitely did not 100% know what I wanted to do in high school. That changed during college. It changed during graduate school. But I think that the one thing that's gotten me far in both graduate school, undergraduate, high school, debate, and life is that ultimately I'm intellectually curious. And I think that that's something that schools are really looking for whenever they look for students and candidates for different types of programs. So I guess I'm going to start at the beginning. In high school, really wanted to go to an East Coast school. That was like my dream. But my parents actually gave me some pretty good advice that I didn't want to, because graduate degrees are becoming kind of almost the new undergrad, right? In some ways. I didn't want to take on a lot of debt for my undergraduate degree. So I ended up applying for a lot of scholarships at a lot of different schools, and kind of thinking through whether or not I wanted to be at a smaller liberal arts college, which is what I ended up going with, or whether or not I wanted to be at a state school. And I think that there are relative advantages and disadvantages to each. For example, all of my professors knew me by name and, everything about me by the time I graduated, which was both a good and terrible thing at the same time. So, I mean, there are benefits of going to small liberal arts colleges, definitely. And I would say that you shouldn't be scared off necessarily by the price tag that you see on the liberal arts college, because a lot of the times they're a lot more giving with scholarships, I found, than state schools. So I actually graduated, I think, with less undergraduate costs than I would have incurred if I had gone to the University of Oklahoma or another state school. So that's something to kind of keep in mind whenever you're picking your undergrad. I am really glad that I followed my parents' advice, because it has allowed me to go to a lot of cool graduate programs that I probably wouldn't have been able to go to otherwise. So as part of my undergrad program, I was able to study abroad at Oxford. I knew I really loved England, and I thought at the time I wanted to be a professor. So I went back and I did my master's at the London School of Economics and then the University of London, and those were both in political theory. When I was applying for those, I think that the admissions committee was really impressed by the fact that I had done like a lot of undergraduate research. So definitely finding opportunities to work with professors or to do independent projects, to learn how to write. I think that those were the most important skills. Learn how to speak. Those were really important skills for me to get into graduate programs. And then I think that stays true whenever you're going through to the PhD level. They want to know that you're an intellectually curious person, but they also want to know that you're a well-rounded person that they can get along with as well. I would second that. I know in a lot of interviews, they kind of look to see who they can actually get along with as a candidate for 5 or 6 years or however long it takes. And then law school, I would say, definitely cares what kind of person you are. If you are interested in that at any point, the personal statements for law school actually are supposed to be completely anecdotal about your life. Basically, like, you tell a life story. And that was something I hadn't done in years. So it was a really jarring experience for me to have to write my law school personal essay. But I guess a little bit on why my trajectory went the way it went, now that I've talked about kind of the process of getting into the schools. Like I said, I wanted to be a professor. It seemed like the family business almost, because I am the 4th Dr. Swadley in 3 generations. except I'm the first one to not do English, so that's something. So yeah, I really thought that I wanted to teach undergraduates, and then I realized that that was not exactly what I wanted to do. It wasn't as glamorous as I thought it was going to be, unfortunately, but I really liked all of the research that I was doing as part of my PhD. I really liked the subject matter. I basically ended up doing a public law PhD, so my dissertation was on law and disability law, and kind of the ways that the Americans with Disabilities Act works. So yeah, that actually gave me a lot of insight into what I wanted to do as a lawyer to practice ultimately after law school and inform my future career. So I guess if there are any takeaways from this, it would be, first of all, that careers are definitely not linear. You don't have to end up in the same place that you start, but also I think that it's important along the line to know what you are interested in and keep kind of honing that interest until you find a career that you really love with it. Yeah, and I think that that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to pull up some of the questions. I'm going to have all of our guest speakers unmute themselves, and we can just take turns answering some of the questions. So,
You.
Sorry about that.
hey, no problem. Okay. So the first question that we have is from a young lady. I won't mention names, but how and when did you decide your major? And Lawson, we'll just start with you first on this one, and then we'll follow the same speaking order.
So for me, I decided my major in my first term at Northwestern. And I'm only in my second term at Northwestern, so I don't know, that might change. But I had an idea of what I wanted to study in college. I wanted to study government and law. And in my first quarter, I took an Intro to International Relations class and a couple of other courses that were, moderately within my interests, but also were filling out like general education requirements. And Intro to International Relations just absolutely blew me away. Far and away the most interesting course I have ever taken at any level of schooling. And so that was the moment that I decided that I am going to major in international relations. Actually, I think that's a decent place for me to stop this at. I can't speak to what'll happen in the future, but I expect that right now.
So I guess I'll go next. I knew that I wanted to pursue medicine. That was something that my dad said I was in elementary school when I first mentioned it. I don't know. But I knew that that was definitely plan, but you can't just say you want to be pre-med and have that be a major. And so I went in thinking, oh, okay, well, I'm supposed to major in science, and that's just what I'm supposed to do. So I picked biochemistry because everyone picks microbiology, and I wanted to be different. And I started taking organic chemistry my first semester, and 2 months in, I said to myself, why would I ever want to put myself through a major of this? Why am I doing this? Like this I have to take, fine, but why would I ever continue doing this? I never want to work in a lab, like ever. And I would have to take inorganic chemistry, which is not necessary for medicine. And after talking to like pre-med advisors, I kind of realized I don't actually have to major in anything that has to do with medicine at all. I can major in something that interests me. I can major in, an alternative career path. And I ended up deciding to do science education because teaching was definitely something that was a passion of mine, and I loved working with kids. And so I actually decided to change my major to science education, where I could still take the courses I needed for pre-med, but also, again, a theme with me, have a backup, because medical school is not guaranteed. So I went through that, actually gained a lot of experiences that helped me kind of indirectly for medical school. And my research in my 4th year, I was working with a kiddo with autism, and it was from an education perspective. However, I got so close with this family, and the little girl's mom actually wrote me a letter of recommendation for medical school. And I think that was one of the biggest things that helped. So kind of took a different path, but I didn't know there was another path until I really looked into it. And I think that if you are wanting to pursue medicine or a grad school kind of path, think about, do I really need to do the standard, major, or can I be more diverse? Can I be more broad in what I want to do and kind of follow some different passions? And in the end, I was really glad. I actually taught at Moore High School for about 1.5 years before medical school, because I took a gap in between. So it ended up being a much better life than a biochemistry degree.
Hey, well, I'll go next. I kind of blame debate in a good way for my major, and that's because I read entirely too much political philosophy as a debater, and realized that I could either do that in a philosophy department or a political science department. And honestly, it was a toss in the hat at my undergrad, but the philosophy professors were way better, so I chose philosophy as an undergrad. But then I think that as I've progressed, I've become a lot more empirical with my work. So I went from philosophy to my master's in political theory, then to a political science department, and now I'm doing law. But they all are related. But yeah, that's when I chose my major. It was very early, and I decided I really love political philosophy, and I still do love political philosophy. It's great. If I could just research and write about it all day, I would be great with that. But yeah, that's kind of how I decided.
All right, our next question is about letters of recommendation. What do you recommend for letters of recommendation? And we'll try to be brief. We've got about 6 other questions to get to. We'll just stick with the same order if you all are fine with that.
Sure. I actually just very recently had to go tail between my legs to a professor to beg for a letter of recommendation. So from recent experience, getting a letter of recommendation from a teacher, an educational figure, there are 2 major components to it. First, actually like that teacher. If you don't like the teacher, but it's like, she was my calculus teacher, so I really want a letter of recommendation from a calculus teacher, don't do it. All right, because the teachers that you like and that you get along with and that you are willing to put the time and effort into their class because you enjoy the class material are going to give you a better letter of recommendation. And then also, secondly, it's kind of hard to say, but butter them up. If it's a teacher in a class with a lot of students and you really do need a letter of recommendation from them, but you don't know them very well, just write an email where you say a lot of nice things about them and or the class. It will not hurt your odds of getting that letter. If possible, try and plan out the teachers that you think you will need letters of recommendation from ahead of time. Going into my senior year, when I was filling out a college application, I already had an idea of the teachers I wanted a letter of rec from, which really helped me in just filling out the application.
I'm going to jump in real quick on this note. As a teacher who's written many letters of recommendation, the ask early, not 48 hours before it's due or whenever. Elisa.
I definitely agree. I was actually going to start off my answer by giving some etiquette bullet points. And one of those is ask early. You do not want to give the teacher like 2 days notice to write a letter for you. You're not going to end up getting a good letter. They're not going to like you very much. It's going to show in the letter. So ask as early as you can. If you know you're going to be asking them for a letter of recommendation, like if it's your speech and debate coach, like of course you're going to ask them, right? So tell them the year before. Tell them, hey, I am planning on asking you for a letter of recommendation. Is this something you'd be willing to do? And I highly doubt that anybody who you're close to, is going to say no. The second piece of etiquette that I wanted to kind of emphasize is be professional when you ask. Whether you're asking in person or asking in an email, yes, butter them up in a professional way. Like, be honest. Say, my experience in speech and debate with you was very meaningful. I feel like you know me very well. And then ask. Don't say, write me a letter of recommendation. Actually make that request. Ask if that's something they feel comfortable doing and willing to do. And then the third piece of etiquette, I think, after they write you a letter of recommendation, please send them a thank you, a formal thank you, a thank you letter, a thank you gift, something, because that is definitely something that they're taking extra time out to do for you, to help you get into the school that you want to go to. My other kind of piece on letters of recommendation, think outside the box. If you do volunteer work outside of school, if you do any other activities, if you have done like just helping somebody out with their business kind of after school, it does not have to be a teacher. It doesn't have to be a coach. It doesn't have to be somebody that is school oriented. It can be somebody who knows you really well, who knows your work ethic, who knows your dedication to what you want to do, who knows about your passions. So as I've dealt with so many letters of recommendation in all my applications, and I think really thinking outside the box gets you a really good letter. As I said, the mom of the little girl that I worked with wrote me an amazing letter. And then I'm going to echo what Alex said, is make sure that you like that person and that person likes you, because it's meaningless if you just ask for a letter from a random person who wasn't, consequential in your life in some way.
So I'm going to echo everything everyone else said, but then I think the unique thing I can add is if in college you were in a big class and you were asking for a letter of recommendation for like graduate school or something like that, get to know your TA really well and go to your professor's office hours. Those are the two things, because I know for every class that I have been a TA for, and there has been someone in my section who needed a letter of recommendation, the professor has written the letter of recommendation, but I've really written their letter of recommendation. So yeah, suck up to your TAs as well, and also go to office hours so the professor knows who you are. Those are two pieces of advice I generally have.
Okay, so the next question is, what was one of the things that surprised you about the application process for your undergrad that you wish you would have known ahead of time? And I think I can speak kind of at this for a moment as well. One of the things that I was really unprepared for was that a lot of major universities, especially like top 10 and Ivy League schools, you actually have to speak to an alumni who lives in your area and you have to go do an interview with this complete stranger. So that was one of the things that really surprised me, that I had no idea about, that I needed to prepare for. But so, Alex, if you're ready.
Um, I would echo what you just said about the interview. That was a very stressful component of applying to college. But separately, I would also add that if you're applying to universities, check early to make sure that they don't have additional essays you need to write. A lot of universities do have extra essays where you'll write a Common App essay, and then you also need to have that answer done. So the earlier you know that, the better. Do not get to 2 or 3 weeks or a month before the application is due and decide that you're going to apply somewhere and be completely surprised by that essay, because that is one of the things that admissions counselors like read. So it's good to have that be polished and the result of a lot of effort. I'll pass it on.
So my application was a long time ago, and I don't remember a whole lot, but actually it's funny, Alex, that you brought that up, because one thing that I do remember that was surprising and a little off-putting was the secondary applications. I was like, okay, I'll do one application, then I'm done. And then you get an email a little while later saying, hey, fill out this stuff too. And be prepared to write a lot. They want to know who you are as a person, and just, you know, your resume and your grades don't get that. And so the only way that they can get an idea of that is either by doing an interview or by having you write essays or short answers to certain questions. And that was a little surprising to me, and just be prepared for it. It's still gonna be a little bit of writing fatigue, but at least if you're prepared for it and you know it exists, then it won't be a shock when you get those extra emails and extra applications.
I was surprised about the extent to which you can negotiate financial aid packages between schools. Like, I would have just thought going into it that they give you a number and that's what they're willing to give you. But definitely if you tell them, or you can play the game with the admissions counselors, and they expect you to play the game too. So always know that you can negotiate for like better scholarships and things like that. I wouldn't have done that.
That's an amazing piece of knowledge I did not know about, and kind of dovetails really nicely into the next question, which is scholarships. What are they and where do I find them? Lawson, we'll start with you on this one.
Off the top of my head, I don't have like a go-to website, but there are lots of websites where there are small scholarships just kind of compiled in one place for you. And $500 or $1,000 might not seem like a lot when you look at the price tag for college, but with a lot of these essays, if you have like a base essay template that you spend some time on and then you fill in the details later, they're pretty easy to apply for. And since they're not huge, not many people apply for them. And if you get even a couple, it really starts to add up.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So don't discount the small ones. I do have a website. I had to look it up, but the one that I used was FastWeb. I think it's fastweb.com. That has a ton of small and larger scholarships that you can apply for. One thing that, especially if you are still early on in your high school career, do not, I guess, there's a lot of emphasis on, oh, okay, it's not just grades that get you into college, but don't discount the grades part, because your grades and your standardized test scores, whether SAT, ACT, can actually earn you quite a bit of money. I got a scholarship that was pretty much a full ride to OU based solely on my GPA and my ACT score. So that's kind of the first thing, like, know that that's available. Oklahoma actually does a really great job of rewarding you for your ACT score. So make sure that you're not forgetting about those things. And then also look into the college websites, because they also have specific scholarships that are only for those colleges that you can apply for. And I think a lot of people don't know about this until they're already students at that college. However, you can apply for scholarships, especially once you know you got into a place. You can apply for the scholarships that are specific to that school. So I think that's kind of all I have.
So the two things I would add are, first of all, don't discount the fact that extracurriculars can get you scholarships. At least a quarter of my scholarship came from my debate scholarship. So that was really important and helped me decide where I was going to go to begin with. And second, I would say look for local community organizations, because I know that the Rotary in Shawnee gave me a huge scholarship. I mean, not huge, but it was like a substantial $3,000-$4,000 scholarship that I wrote like a 300-word essay for. And things like that add up.
Yeah, my wife was a car hop at Sonic in high school, and when she graduated and was accepted to university, Sonic gave her $1,000 scholarship just for, going to college, and she applied and got the scholarship, and she was one of several people who did. So yeah, like scholarships exist everywhere. One of the things that's really stood out to me that I heard when I was younger, and I remember it all these decades later, is if it takes you 10 hours to fill out 10 $1,000 scholarships and you only get one of them, don't think that you only got like 10% of those scholarships, right? You just got paid $100 an hour. You took 10 hours and filled out 10 applications and got $1,000. And there's nobody here who would turn down $100 an hour. So I would just think about it that way. Your time is money, and there's no better money than scholarship money. So then I think we've got time for one, maybe two more. How do you balance your extracurricular activities with like your desire to be valedictorian? What do you do there? Or is, how do you do both? How do you do all these things? So Lawson, I'll let you take it away.
So I think that I'm just going to hit on three really quick points. First, grades come first, because while grades alone will not get you into a college that you want to get into, they are the thing that might tank your hopes of getting into the college you want to get into. Second, don't overload yourself. If you have one or two extracurricular activities that you really like, that is all that you really need to have to get where you want to go if you apply yourself in those extracurricular activities. If you have 10, it's going to be almost impossible to balance extracurriculars and grades. And then finally, I'm going to shill for speech and debate here for a second. Speech and debate will improve your grades. It will teach you how to think critically, how to think quickly, and how to find the warrants within arguments. When you're writing a timed essay, finding the easiest way to explain why something is true is key. I'll pass it on.
I think really all of those points are the most valid. And one of the things that I don't know, struggled with maybe, or just that's just me. I tend to spread myself thin. I've always done that. I'm still doing that. But know your limits. If you are finding out that all these activities that you're doing, either one, you're not enjoying them as much anymore, or two, you're not being as successful in them, or your grades are falling behind because you're too focused on them, you need to pull back. You have to prioritize, and you have to figure out what is more important to you and what you feel like you can put to the side or let go of. So that's something that it's a skill that you have to learn. And I had a hard time learning, like, what can I cut out and what is really important for me. And as we kind of said before, having too many extracurriculars, having a ton of things to put on your application isn't really beneficial if you don't have something meaningful behind each of them that says something about you.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that you need to pick, your passion projects kind of right in terms of extracurriculars and do those really well. Because I think that college admissions counselors and people giving scholarships are going to look at kind of two buckets of things. They're going to look at your grades, which are really important. They're also going to look at your activities. But if you're in like 15 different activities and do all of them terribly, they're not going to care about any of them. Whereas if you do one really well, then they're going to think that you're a standout person because of the fact that you did well in that activity. Yeah, and echoing speech and debate as the best activity that you can do in high school.
I was going to say the same thing.
I would agree. So last, yeah, not biased. Last question for you all for the evening is what strategies did you do to improve your test scores, like on standardized tests, ACT and SAT and stuff? I know for me, my only strategy was do it over, do it again, do it again, do it again. But maybe you all have different ones.
First things first, take the PSAT and the pre-SAT. You'll get an option to, don't remember if it's sophomore or junior year. Take it both years. I think it's you can take it and it doesn't count sophomore year, and you take it and it counts junior year. Take it both years. There is substantial money there to be made, and it's also, if I remember right, free through more high school. Plus, it's really good practice for the ACT and the SAT, or whatever standardized test you're applying to colleges with. Also, speech and debate does teach you to read really quickly. And I know it sounds like Mr. Kissinger has bribed me, but seriously, it will just help.
I'm not going to say that that is not true, because it is 100% true. But I think doing practice questions, if you want to do well on the test, to be honest, it is not about knowing the material. It's about knowing the test and understanding the nuances of taking a test. Sometimes you cannot know the material at all, but find a way to narrow your choices down so you have a better way of, a better chance of getting the right answer. So doing practice questions, I'm still doing standardized tests. I'm doing word prep right now for pediatrics. So really just doing practice questions over and over and over again. If you struggle with standardized testing, then doing that is going to be extra beneficial for you. And then absolutely, any chance you get to take a practice test, definitely take it. If you don't get a good score the first time, don't be disheartened by it. There's nothing wrong with taking it multiple times. I think I took the ACT 2 or 3 times. Yeah, 3 times. And I took the SAT only once because I was just overloaded on standardized tests. But definitely do that. And then there are resources you can find to like learn the strategies of standardized test taking. I don't have a particular one, but I know there are books out there, there are courses out there if you feel like you need that. And if you, one thing I kind of want to point out, like, I don't know if this is the pediatrician brain in me, but if you have anxiety around standardized testing, start working on that early and find ways to tackle that. So when you're taking it for real, you already have coping mechanisms in place. So that doesn't become a detrimental thing to you, because it's really frustrating to know, you know, the material, you know, the answers, but the simple situation of taking a standardized test, it can be very anxiety provoking. So if you know that about yourself, address it early so you can kind of be at your best when you're taking the test.
Yeah, I would echo everything that's been said. By default, I'm not a very good standardized test taker. I definitely have to take tests over and over and over to learn the rules of the test. But they are tests that you can learn the rules of usually, and that's a good thing. I think also as these tests move more and more to computer-based tests, I don't know if the ACT and SAT have moved to computers yet. They have, okay.
Yes,
So
ACT has at least.
I would suggest wearing blue light blocking glasses. And I know that that sounds like a really small, weird tit, but I get really bad migraines during standardized tests if I don't wear blue light blocking glasses, and it made me have to take the GRE twice. And you don't want to have to do that. So.
I'm sorry. One more thing about standardized tests. A lot of colleges will take the best scores from each section of the test. So if you get like good scores in math, science, and reading, but you bomb the English section, you can just focus on the English section for your next ACT. And a lot of colleges will just add the best scores together, and you can apply with that.
And structurally, and your counselors will be able to tell you more about this. But if you are on an individualized education plan, an IEP, a 504, then those standardized exams have to provide those same accommodations for you, and your counselor can help you more with that. And the last thing I would say is, and check this with your counselor, check this with your local area, but a lot of areas, if you are on free and reduced lunches, they will provide you a second or third attempt at the ACT or SAT for free. But you know, you have to check with your local counselors and local school on that. I just want to thank our speakers so much for an hour of your evening. I really appreciate all of you taking time away from your families or away from your studies to be able to help young people and help their parents understand kind of how to navigate this wild world where getting a degree is so important that everyone wants to do it, but some people just don't know the process. So thank you all so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.